I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Boardwalk and Beach Committee meeting. It is 2 o'clock, and today's the 29th of June. We'll start with roll call. Everybody turn off your, put your cell phones on mute, but we usually don't have that problem. But just remind everybody. And I'm going to start with a roll call. Howard Menaker.
Here.
Patricia Davis.
Here.
Honey Fisher.
Here. Jimmy Horty, here.
Jimmy Hardy. Frank Cole.
Here.
Greg Deere.
Here.
Brian Hancock.
Here.
Now, I'm Jay Legree, and I'm the chairman of the committee for now, and we want to welcome everybody. Chief Banks and Public Works Manager, Director, King of Public Works is here, Kevin Williams. We're glad you folks could come. And also Lynne Coan, who's Director of, can I say Director of Communications?
I will take the promotion, thank you.
You deserve it. And Linda Travers is operating the control panel, and we're glad that everybody could make it. The first thing I'd like to do is approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of January and the meeting held on the 26th of April of this year. Let's start with 25 January, and I think, Howard, you were not here on the 25th, so, you'll have to hang in there until we get to the 20. I'm sure you're waiting. Are there any corrections or additions or anything we missed on the 25th? Do I hear let's go to the 26th also then. How about the 26th? Are there any corrections or additions or any changes? Do I hear and Howard, you can vote now. Do I hear a motion to approve the 25th?
So moved.
Second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to approve the 26th of April?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those minutes are approved, and we didn't receive any correspondence to the agenda this month. We've had verbal communications with people on various things, but I think we're good to go as far as correspondence is concerned. What I'd like to do, as you can look at the agenda, you'll see on new business, there's an update on communication projects by Lynne Coan, Director of Communications, who accepted the promotion. And I'm going to move that, if it's okay with everybody, to the first item on the agenda, so she can, and I hope that she'll be able to stay and let us ask her questions as we go along. We have a fairly significant interest at this meeting in digitization of an information that's pertinent to the boardwalk, and we'll develop that as the meeting goes along. Lynne, go.
Well, thank you all so much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about communications for the city and my vision and goals, and to hear some of your visions and goals. So I want to give you a little bit about background about myself, and if I get going in too much detail, you can just cut me off or ask me a question. So I have been doing local government communications for about 26, 27 years now. No, actually maybe 22. I was in the city of Swanee, Georgia for 15 years. I was their first public information officer. Was hired on a part-time basis, had a young son at the time, so a part-time job was ideal. 14 hours a week, and my responsibilities were to do 2 press releases a month and update the website. And that was about it initially. So after 15 years there, I moved to Vienna, Virginia, where I was their communications and marketing manager for 5 years before I came here last April. And when I came here and in my previous positions, when I think about communications and what it is I'd like to achieve, these are some of the things that I think about. For me, communications is all about building community and making people feel connected to their community. So through messaging, communication channels, and other opportunities, I hope that people feel that they are a part of Rehoboth Beach. I also see it as my job to help protect and promote the city's brand. Now, we haven't defined what that is for Rehoboth Beach yet, but I want to be sure that when people look at the city, when they look to the city for information or they have an interaction with the city, remember, it's a goal, it's not a realistic achievement. I want them to come away with a positive experience or a good impression of the city of Rehoboth Beach. And I hope to build pride, trust, and awareness of the city of Rehoboth Beach and its programs, its policies, its initiatives. Another goal is to enhance engagement opportunities with constituents, to consider strategies that help ensure that what the city is receiving in that two-way communication channel is truly representative of public sentiment and not perhaps just the voice of a few vocal people. I also work with colleagues and elected officials to ensure that the city communicates with one clear voice, that the left ear knows what the right hand is doing. And one of my personal goals is to not be boring or governmenty. I feel like in order to ensure that people pay attention to you, it's important to be succinct and creative and interesting. So those are kind of my aspirational goals that I come to my position with. And I wanted to share with you just quickly what my responsibilities are here in Rehoboth Beach, because that differs from communications to communications position. And some people aren't aware of some of the things that communications does. So what I do is I edit and design a twice monthly digital newsletter. It's called Lines in the Sand, and if you haven't subscribed, I hope that you will. I serve as a liaison to the media, newspapers, television stations, radio stations. So I coordinate all our media relations efforts. I send out press releases. I respond to requests for interviews and inquiries. I help provide actual responses to questions the media is asking. I manage the content on the website, and I know that the website is a topic we're going to be talking a bit about today, so I'm going to gloss over it for now, but it is a team effort with our IT department to manage the city's website. I also manage the city's social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I also manage the police department's Facebook page. I manage a new text and email alert system called Rehoboth Beach Beacon. We started that in April. We have 1,659 contacts. These are folks who receive an email and or text from the city when something is not as it should be. An event has been canceled or road is going to be closed. I also wanted to mention that for Lines in the Sand, there are currently 5,365 subscribers. With other departments, I coordinate direct mail communications when necessary. For example, I work with Kevin when street work, the annual paving is going to be done and residents in that area need to be aware. If there's a policy change, like the changes to trash services this year, we sent out a direct mail piece about that. And when there are new initiatives like the inventory required by the lead and copper rule revisions. I produce the city's printed annual calendar and coordinate the Rehoboth Reflections photo competition, which was new last year. I also coordinate special events applications. I receive those from other organizations and work with our police department and our city manager to get those approved if appropriate. And so I coordinate that process. I also coordinate the city's fireworks display and acquisition of the community Christmas tree. I help create messaging for the marquee out front, not for convention center events, but other messaging. I take photos and create a robust photo library. I produce branded promotional materials, which is my show and tell today. I'm so excited. These are new promotional items. So we have cinch sacks that we are going to be giving away at the bandstand during the concerts, and I'm open to other ideas. We're going to be receiving sand pail kits too, branded with the city, and then I am ready for ribbon cuttings now. So let's see. I also coordinate the city's non-legal advertising, and I answer a lot of phone questions from citizens and visitors. So that's the bulk of how my days are spent. And I thought I would share with you my professional priorities. So when I was hired, these are the things that I've done in the past, how long have I been at, 14 months or so, that were a priority to me when I first came to Rehoboth. And one was, there did not seem to be a regular means of communication with citizens. It required some kind of special effort, special mailing to communicate with residents and stakeholders. So we established the digital newsletter lines in the sand. In my previous communities, we did printed newsletters. Now they had a long history, and we had conversations over the years several times about going digital. No doubt it is much less expensive to do digital. There's printing cost and postage costs. There were several times, though, that I was happy that we had not gone digital. In my opinion, people tend to throw out digital, discard digital. It's so easy, a swipe of the thumb, than they are a printed newsletter. But there are, again, good reasons for doing a digital newsletter, and that's what we do here in Rehoboth. I also work to establish more of a presence, a more personable and robust presence on social media sites. My feeling is that social media is where the city can show a little bit of its personality and have a little bit of fun, and so I hope that that comes through. I established the Rehoboth Beach Beacons alert system, the new text email alert system, and also the Rehoboth Reflections photo competition as a way to engage residents and visitors, and hopefully to enhance the annual printed calendar. There are some priorities that I haven't yet gotten to fully, and to be honest, there may not be full buy-in from the city on some of these. Those are conversations to have in the future, but some of those topics would be, I'd like to continue efforts to improve the website. I've worked over the past year to update information and kind of streamline information. I've made it through about 3/4 of the website pages. I have not made it through all the pages under the government section yet. I think that it is time for an update to the website. It's showing its age a little bit. I believe it's 7 to 8 years old. But that is a commissioner decision, really, because it has significant budget implications. And as I said, I work with my IT department, and we need to make sure that that's a priority that fits among their other priorities as well. But I think that particularly the homepage, we could use the real estate on the homepage more effectively, and we could improve the navigation, make it a little more friendly to use on the website. One thing I'd like to consider in the future is brand development and perhaps logo creation. In general, people at the city seem to be very happy with the seal as the logo, but that's not a brand, and it's not really a logo, but it's working, it's functional. So I think there are also opportunities for cooperation and coordination with other organizations within Rehoboth Beach to amplify our message, perhaps. And then certainly opportunities within the region as well to coordinate efforts. I think that we could do some things like advertising, national digital advertising to expand Rehoboth Beach's national reputation and perhaps attract more visitors. I'm not sure if that's a goal the city has or not. So, and citizen engagement opportunities is another area, big focus. In fact, that would be, I would say, the hottest topic in government communications for the past several years. How do you move in citizen engagement beyond the open house? There are interactive project websites, several companies that allow you to track projects through the entire process and allow people to offer comments and stories, ideas, tips. You can do pop-up kiosks, go to where the people are. Now for Rehoboth Beach, that's really a challenge. Our residents and property owners are all around the country. There are companies like Flashvote that do, or claim that they do, scientific, nonpartisan surveys among citizens. So those are opportunities that perhaps the city will want to explore in the future. Another trend I think that is big is the incorporation of video and multimedia, and that may be an area of growth for the city. And so that just in general is a overview of what I do and my thoughts and my goals, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lynn. Before we go on to old business, both Chief Banks and Mr. Williams are here. Would you like to say, do we have anything that we need to talk about? And so you can get on with whatever you want to get on with or anything? Are you good to go?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. We love it because you're able to hear Lynn and hear our discussion, but you're welcome to stay or go, but I wanted to make sure I didn't ignore you. And I heard the words from Chief before the meeting started. We talked a little bit. I don't think nothing significant. So we're good on that score. These are just
Hi, Kevin.
thanks, Kevin. You just loaded us up with ideas and thoughts and aspirations and projects and plans. I just don't know where to start. But Patricia and Honey have been working on digitization, as has Howard, as had Greg, as we all have. And go ahead and start the discussion, Patricia.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much, Lynn, for coming in. I know, especially during the summer, it's a very hectic time for you, so we appreciate your time. For background, so you all know, I have spoken with Lynn several times, and we've been emailing back and forth to discuss this issue. And so what I had mentioned to Lynn was this sort of all started when we talked about permits and the permit process and events on the boardwalk, and that generated a discussion about, what can we do as the committee, the Boardwalk and Beach Committee, to promote the events that are on the boardwalk. and to kind of get our heads around what's happening on the boardwalk and the bandstand and on the beach. And so that led to, well, how are events being promoted and where are they being promoted? And should it be digital or paper or a combination of both? And as you and I discussed, the wave of the future is digital. Although, to your point, there are there are some opportunities about paper, right, with the calendar that you've so wonderfully published.
And can I respond a little bit to that? So, one of the things that is unique in Rehoboth, and some communities might aspire to, is the community events that are held are generally not planned or financially supported by the city. They are other organizations doing those sometimes very large events, which in general I think is a benefit to the city. But when in other places I've worked, the city might promote its own events or events that it has approved. So here, where the events are private, it was a little bit of a conundrum for me. And I finally came to the realization that for various reasons, people really did want to know about the events. So now, all approved city events are included on the calendar on the city website. And I also have started including them in lines in the sand. Here's what's coming up the next 2 or 3 weeks, event-wise.
That's the best news I've heard all day. There are just lots and lots of events that are on the boardwalk. I mean, and some of these events are, although they're private, they bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some of the events use personnel from other departments around the city, plus we have to clean up after them. And it's just a myriad of really close connections, and I'm glad that you're advocating listing them. And now, go ahead, Patricia. I don't want to.
Actually, if I can, just briefly, Lynn, could you just clarify for me, because I'm not sure. You said city-approved events are going up on the calendar. Does that mean they're issued a permit? Is that what we're talking about in terms of approval?
That is correct. They're issued
Okay,
a special event permit.
Thank you.
Does that include like the weddings on the beach?
No,
Okay.
it does not.
So the weddings would not
And
be
The weddings would
on the
not.
list.
A pavilion rental at Grove Park, which the library does, they don't really submit a special event permit. They rent the pavilion for a few of their summer camps. I don't include those in my promotion.
Those wouldn't affect us anyway, but it's nice to know. So what if we wanted to have a section of the city website that listed events that were happening on the boardwalk, private events that were permitted and cleared, and what if we wanted to put photographs and say, this week is the marathon, and maybe have some photographs from how the bandstand has all would there ever be a way to do anything like that?
Well, that was one of the questions that we talked about, Lynn, that when you go to the city website and then to the boardwalk link, it really lists more services than events. But if you go to somewhere like if you go to rehobothbandstand.com, wow, it's so robust and it's just very dynamic and very contemporary. And so the question would be, at least for me anyway, is there a way, and I know you like to have everything centralized, you don't want to have a website here and a website there, and everything needs to, which I totally get. But for example, is there a way to do, say, the boardwalk, rehobothboardwalk.com, maybe /events, create something dynamic like bandstand.com? And I know this would take money, and we're certainly aware of that. And the other thing I want you to think about is that we want to be a partner with you. We want to promote the bandstand, we want to promote the boardwalk and the beach. So we want to be an advocate for you to help you do the excellent job that you do. And if that means, we make a recommendation to the mayor and commissioners that you need a budget added, some money added to the budget, that's what we're willing to help with. Am I speaking out of turn? Is that good? Okay. So that's the,
Okay, so as you and I discussed, I happen to be of the philosophy with social media, with websites, that centralizing information is better than having a half dozen separate sites. I feel like there is power of numbers in that centralization and clarity. People know that there's one place to go. It's not. So I agree that the Rehoboth Bandstand site is an attractive site.
and that's a city site, is it not?
It's one of those hybrids.
Okay.
I think it's a city site
Because I can get to it going on,
because there's a link on the city site.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
But we fund the bandstand. That's a.
Yes, we
That's
do.
a Rehoboth Beach.
It is.
A finance center.
So I spoke with Corey Kroll, the bandstand director. I'm like, Corey, how did this web page happen? Because it was before my time. And Corey has a web development background, so the city's very fortunate that he is multi-talented. And so he created that website. My strong preference would be to not create a separate website for the boardwalk.
I agree with you, Lynn. I have web design background as well, and I think the less distraction you have, you need to keep it all centralized. I agree with you. I would want to make one suggestion for that bandstand site. It's a great site, but it should open up a new window, because once you're on there, you've lost the menu, you've lost everything, and you could lose the people. Once they go to
On
that
the
site-
band, you mean you've
On
lost
the-
Rehoboth.com, or
Yeah.
you've lost, oh,
When
okay.
you're on City of Rehoboth, and then you
Right.
click on the bandstand, it
Okay.
comes up in the same window.
I can take a look and see, I think
Yeah,
I
there's
should
a
be able
couple,
to
like
do
the
that.
CDP, there are a couple links within there that, it just, once you've clicked on them,
Right.
you're someplace else and you're.
Right.
they're gone.
Well, and I think the challenge is even bigger than that, because I'm on the website now. If you click where it says bandstand on the city website, that does not take you to the bandstand site.
Right.
It takes you to a page of the city's website, and then you have to click again to get to it.
Yes.
And so I think it is, I mean, you said you're working on navigation, and I think that's a perfect example of, can we get all of the information in one place so that people have to, because you're right. I think you said it earlier, the more clicks people have to go through, the more likely you are to lose them.
Yep.
And so if that can somehow be incorporated in our case, if whatever the the boardwalk committee and the city wants to put up about the boardwalk, if it's a one-click function, I think it will be it'll serve our visitors and our residents a whole lot better.
Right. I also think that it would be possible to create an event page, so it would be something like, right now, /event goes to the calendar, but maybe it's cityofrehoboth.com/event list. And it's a page that has some photos and list all the events, so that when I post them to the calendar, I also post them to that page. However, there may be some quality control. For example, I have the basic information. I have the date, time, name of the event, and possibly a link to their website. But I'm not managing the event itself, so anyway. And would you limit it to those approved special permit events, or would you include weddings and a business is doing something, or?
You'd never sleep.
That would be difficult.
Yeah, and as a practical matter, I mean, not only would you never sleep, but we'll never know. I mean, if a wedding is allowed, we don't know if it's gonna happen that date or that time. I mean, all those things shift, but if there's a city permit for a specific time and place, then I think that's about the only form of control we have.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe it's not just looking at although that's our purview, is the boardwalk. Maybe it's looking at the entire website, which I know would be an enormous job, but perhaps we're just talking about this piece just to give you some ideas, but that doesn't mean you couldn't apply it to other links or sites on the website.
Well, and maybe you're right, maybe that event list isn't under the boardwalk section, because if a race is happening at Grove Park, would you not include it? Because it's not on the boardwalk, but maybe if it's under visitors and events, then we could list all the approved events.
Right. So the convention center, do you also approve permits for the convention center? Or
I do not, that is a colleague of mine.
so that's a separate,
That's-
another group of people who do
Yes.
that? Wow,
And
that's
and they
amazing.
keep their own list, and I'm sure that's true. They keep their own calendar and everything.
They do,
Is that on the calendar that you publish?
no.
Well, that's interesting, okay.
Have you thought about that? Have you thought about combining the events from the convention center with events that you have in town or within?
I had not thought about that. I don't know that, because I would need to think about it more, but the fact that it's a rental, I kind of think of the convention center as, again, private, personal, separate from the city, but maybe that's not accurate.
Something to think about. Also, we would like, and I'm sure Howard's going to talk about this, we'd like to have a place for guidelines and rules and regulations of the boardwalk and
They are on there.
That-
Rules
that-
and regulations
in
are
our
there.
own section.
That exists.
That is under the beach and boardwalk section of the city website. There is a whole section on rules and regulations, which is good. You know, my only observation, which we talked about at earlier meetings, is it also shows up a lot of other places, and they're not terribly consistent. And that's not just the city publishing it. There are private organizations who are publishing guidelines and rules for the beach and boardwalk that have nothing to do with the city's actual rules. That's not anything you or
Right,
we can
right.
control.
So I guess my question then is, how do we incorporate that with events and that part of our, of
Well, one thing I will say about websites, and I'm sorry, is in Vienna, we redid the website. You think our website is bad, you should have seen their old one. So we're looking pretty good. But, so we started from scratch, that's how bad it was. But the framework for us that was so important was not to come at it from an inside City Hall perspective. We know that the water department is under Public Works and you need to go here to get this information. We tried to think like a user outside of City Hall.
When you talked about brands, that Rehoboth, we always think of the boardwalk as a brand. Is that
part of our brand for
part
sure.
of part of our brand? So when you talk about the fact that you'd like to develop the brand, or what do you talk? What's your definition when you talk about brands of a city?
Okay, so that is a hard question, but I'm going to try my best. I did go through a branding process in Vienna as well. And as I understand it, a brand is your essence. It's your personality. It's maybe the 3-4 adjectives that describe the essence of Rehoboth Beach. And then the logo is a graphic representation of that brand.
Okay.
Have you ever listened to Tony Pratt talk about brands for beach towns? He was the, I think, anyway, he worked for DENREC his entire career. He lives over in Lewis, I think. And he was in charge of Delaware's beaches and shoreline for years. And he believes that successful beach towns have a brand and that they must always keep this brand. If they ever lose their brand, it makes them it brings on a very difficult situation. And it's hard to get back the stature that they once had when they had a brand. They had lots of income, lots of money coming in. And he has examples of some towns that have lost their brand and now they're scrambling just to make ends meet. And he believes that your brand is one of the most valuable things you can have if you're a beach town or a tourist attraction. And Rehoboth Beach has an incredible brand. We have an unbelievable brand, and we need to keep it. And you know that, I'm sure, better than anyone. If you turn on Good Morning America or someone, you'll hear about the Rehoboth Boardwalk and Beach Town. And the Boardwalk is a big part of our brand, as is our beach.
Right.
But lots of other things. Things like Trasher's French fries and Coors ice cream and Dolly's and all the commercial things that really have an integral part in our brand. And people remember taffy when they were little kids. They remember riding the boats at Funland. Those are commercial enterprises, and they are really important to the brand of Rehoboth Beach. And I don't know how you incorporate all that, but
Well, Commissioner, I think to your point, I'm not sure that Thrashers or the Boardwalk is necessarily brand, but the feeling that they generate in folks, that's Rehoboth's brand.
believe me, if you talk to any person who was here when he was a little kid, he'll bring up Treasure.
They are very
We have to
good.
be careful because we could lose thrashers like Dolly's.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's
Well,
tough.
And I think that you're right, Jay, in terms of people will remember Dollies and Thrashers. The challenge that the city has, though, is that they have to stay agnostic. And so you
That's
can't
tough.
advertise Thrashers without advertising the ice cream shop, and you can't advertise the ice cream shop without advertising. And
Sour
suddenly
candy,
you're
and
advertising, you're in the commercial advertising business. So I think what Lynn is talking about is how do we establish the brand that incorporates all of those without talking about any of them by name, but evoke those memories and those images of being in Rehoboth Beach that you're talking about. And it's a hard thing to do. That's why there are professionals like Lynn and others who do this
But I
for a
think
living.
probably a good advertising person can handle it, but I certainly can't. I don't know how you do it without,
Right.
you know. But when you talk to people, we have a brand.
Well, and that's how
really
you determine that brand is by talking with people. The process in Vienna, we interviewed hundreds of people in groups, and the agency that we hired, you know, got to that community's essence by talking with people about their experiences, about what they loved, about what the challenges were.
Lynn, where does the slogan "America's summer capital"?
The nation's summer capital.
Nation's summer capital.
You've stumped me. I mean, I, of course, have heard of it. I'm not sure how it developed, but it's been around for quite a while.
Yeah, a long time.
What I was advised by, back then, Mayor Sam Cooper said that, that the city had never adopted that as a slogan, or that it just, newspapers from DC and other areas just kind of, dubbed that as where the nation's summer capital. So I said, but the city has never anywhere officially adopted that. Even though they said it wasn't adopted, but it was for a long time on some of our signs. So I guess you could argue if it was officially adopted or somebody took it upon themselves and it was approved when they had the signs made, but yes.
Maybe it was an urban legend, but I guess I was told that it's because so many people from Washington come here that it was like,
And that's how the
They're all-
That's the
newspapers and,
explanation, yeah.
and our state.
I cannot, I know we've had it, but I cannot name one person who comes here from Washington.
Nick
We need
Nixon
to talk.
came here. There
We're
was a house
agnostic.
in Virginia
I
that
do,
was torn
Jay.
down, and Nixon stayed there.
a
But
number of people in our building are from
And they don't fall off their
Washington.
bike, or they don't go to church or
No, no,
anything.
no, yeah.
So we have it, you know? My point is, we have it, and we just gotta keep it.
Or define it.
Yeah. Patrick Gossett asked me to define it 3 or 4 years ago, and I did a terrible job. It's hard. It's really hard.
in some ways, it's easier to define what we're not.
Yeah,
when you go to other places and you look around and maybe it's not as vibrant or not as safe. And then you wonder, why is that? It could be leadership, it could be good policy, it could be just luck. But so far, we've escaped a lot of the
Yeah.
negatives that some of the other beach towns that used to be really popular have kind of, that trap they've fallen into. And it's a lesson there to avoid those things, that the
Right.
mistakes that they made, if you want to keep Rehoboth the way it is now.
Yeah, Chief.
I don't know if I can kind of piggyback off that, but for earlier discussions, when you're talking about events, and hopefully I'm not confusing when I say this, but we have to be careful on what events we put on websites, I think, as that are permitted issued. Because, and then you're talking about putting photographs and things like that maybe in the future, but just be cognizant, sometimes the permits that are issued, it is an event, but they're falling under like First Amendment rights, speeches and stuff. So do we want to give somebody a free platform? It'd be putting an attachment to their website, because as Mr. Cole said, you may start getting something negative, and maybe a positive event. I don't want to come across, it can be either way. But some people come in because there's, something going on in Washington, D.C., and we have a visitor close by and they're making a point and stuff. So we do issue permits for that, and it, quite honestly, it is an event when you start getting 100 or 200 people that show up for that. So what that goes back to making sure we have good policies and procedures and what we are defining as events, because you start putting some of those on and attaching photographs, our city solicitor may come back and say it has to be the same for everybody. What you do. So that goes in a bigger picture, but I did want to bring that up, that kind of set up when that was mentioned earlier.
How do we handle that on the bandstand? We have photographs, I guess, of almost everybody.
It's probably in their contract.
Well, for the bandstand, we do, but for example, I don't really have photos of walks. A lot of the fundraising walks that occur. I have Sea Witch, Farmers Market, the July 4th. So the bigger ones and the ones that the city is more involved with.
I think what we're saying, or what I'm saying, is the way that the bandstand section of their website has quite an impact to me, as opposed to just a list of events that would be on there with dates. Maybe I'm not clear where I'm headed, but.
It does have an impact, but it's also, it's professionally curated. The performers are professionally curated.
Yeah.
The website is. So it's, and it is managed by someone who works for the city of Rehoboth Beach.
Lynn, in April, when we talked, you had mentioned that there were 60 permits that had been approved or were in the process of being approved. Since that time, have there been more, or is that an average number for a year?
So I counted this morning, and I came up with about 87.
87.
Those are now, for example, one of the reasons that number went up is, to Chief's point, we just approved Sunday services on the beach for July and August. So each of those is listed separately.
And is there a max in terms of permits? Is there a number you stop at, or no?
I've not been given any guidance on
Interesting.
that.
Yeah, we don't have a policy on that as far as the numbers. Again, you have to be consistent, and so I guess at some point you could say how many events, and then you'd almost have to start over and have a free-for-all, because how many foot races, how many this and that. I guess you can go back and look at how many events you want per month or per weekend or what, but
I'm
right
just
now
thinking
there's no
capacity,
guidelines set
there's
by
got
the
to be a
city.
capacity at some point, that you don't. And do you ever not, or do you not approve some permits?
There have definitely been
Yeah,
some.
there's definitely permits, the events that's not permitted, or we say absolutely no to, whatever. I don't want to say it doesn't fit the brand, but it's just, we can't even accommodate it. They're so big asking to come in, or on the same day. A lot of the issues are, we try to limit to only one event per day. But again, what is an event? Because the boardwalk is public, so that's another thing we struggle with is somebody says, well, I'm hosting a walkthrough with my church or some other organization. So they can, but a lot of times they want to register it. So we do have everybody fill out a permit because it's better, it's easy to control that way, and we get some more accurate numbers for everyone. But yeah, we try to limit to one event per day. As far as big event, if somebody's got to walk on a side, we can't do much about it. We just want to know about it.
So it sounds like you have pretty broad authority to deny an event.
I think we go into it trying not to deny.
Correct, because we go in for, we have a core group or whatever, and then we try to keep, the city manager is always involved, not the police department has to sign off, because if it's a big event, well, they need police department assistance, or they're gonna need parking to close things down, or whatever the case may be. So the city manager keeps the, the mayor and commissioners informed as far as how that would go. But speaking over the years with the city solicitor and things, it's we kind of know what we can and what the guidelines are, but if we have an issue, we definitely reach out to the city manager and the city solicitor if we have any questions. So we don't really just take it upon ourselves or whatever to say no, but to Lynne's case, I think we try to sit there and say, how can we have the event first versus saying no, since we don't have any guidelines, how many.
When we say no, just to repeat what Chief said, is often because there are other events scheduled at that time, and we'll try to see if they have an alternative date. I know one that we could not approve last year wanted to use the dock, and we weren't ready at that point to do that.
And we're getting a lot more events asked for at Grove Park. And those will typically be easier sometimes to deny because the ordinance is written just for the farmer's market. So a lot of people come, well, people at the farmer's market can do this or do that, add on those days. But how the Grove Park is actually set up and all that, it doesn't allow for a lot of things in that park except for farmer's market.
Are there events that you have to allow for constitutional reasons that you don't publicize, or that might be so sensitive that it would be dangerous to publicize them? Or I think you know where I'm headed on situations like that.
I think I know where you're headed, Commissioner. At the end of the day, you put the event on there. It's just that when earlier the group was kind of talking about, or someone was about putting a link to it, I just get kind of, we can't control that then. So if somebody's that interested in learning more, I would always suggest you go to that.
For example, there was a press conference yesterday held by a political group. I don't think I put it on the calendar because it was just recently approved, but
Those situations do come up then. And I guess that would affect what we do with our listing of events and on our web. We're trying to get a web presence. We're trying to develop a web presence.
Right, I think one of the takeaways is that what we're trying to do is attract as many residents and visitors, businesses to Rehoboth through the website as easily as possible, with the fewest clicks, I guess, if that's the, nomenclature here. And we want to be able to provide you with whatever information you need to help accomplish that. Would that be a fair statement?
the, part of it may be educating people where to look. Like the calendar seems like a natural place for me. I'm not sure that our calendar is the most attractive or friendly, but if we redo it, maybe we say under the calendar, check for fun events and public meetings or something like that.
You had some fairly specific things that you wanted to do with the website. Navigation, I'll second that. Homepage improvements, I'll second that. Updates, I'll second that. Any kind of because we would like to get in on that, to get in and to develop the boardwalk part of it more than what we are doing now. I think I'm speaking for everybody on that. Any
Well, that certainly would be an appropriate place, I think, to kind of build the presence of the boardwalk on the website. I'm still a newbie, barely newbie here. My understanding is that it is because there's not built-in budget to update, revise the website on an annual basis, that undertaking this kind of update, rework, redevelopment is a significant investment on the city's part and will have to be part of the budget conversation.
It will be, that's easy to do. That's easy. This is so important that I think we'll talk about that.
But I think, if I may, just to tie in, I think what you had said, and I think Frank had chimed in on it also, we want to make sure that for the city that, we are protecting its brand, we are protecting and not falling into the same holes as other, beach resort towns that were very successful, and, we want to stay on top of what we have. So I think tying into what Commissioner LeGree had said, and I think everybody else is, this may be the starting point, to, start working on the boardwalk. And, I know it's not something that's done overnight, but, put money in the budget so, we can have somebody, do what you said happened in your previous town that you were in, of Vienna, I believe, and, get somebody in here who can work on creating our brand and, conduct the interviews and, talk to everybody. And I think, a lot of the ideas that you brought up and the conversations that we've had about it, I think I can speak for everybody that that's something that we've all been thinking, and it's just, what's the next step and how we do it. And I think that is definitely something that the commissioners would have to discuss, start off, I guess, in a workshop, and then continue on and get it on the agenda for one of the meetings, and especially with the different departments, and, to come up with a budget and, get it approved.
I will comment that in Vienna, we held off a year or two on updating our website until we got through the branding process.
Yeah.
So it depends on whether there's any interest in doing a branding.
How did you handle the commercial part of the website? It was in Vienna?
It was in the town of Vienna, yes.
How do you handle the commercial? How do they handle the commercial aspects? Do they say anything about the commercial part of Vienna? They must.
There was definitely a tension and difference of opinion, perhaps, between how the communications thought commercial businesses should be handled and how the economic development manager felt that way. In general, we tried to promote businesses in general and support the business community without specifying a specific business. Now, we might have a photo of a business in town or a business owner, but we wouldn't promote Thrashers on the website.
I'm sorry.
Is the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah.
Are they included in our website? On the town's
Just a
website?
link, in the same way that the bandstand is, there's a page about the Chamber of Commerce, and it's basically just a link to their website. But that would be a way to work together with the Chamber.
Right, and I think that's probably the right way to go, because both Main Street and the Chamber are there to promote business. That is their job. And let them make their decisions about whether they're going to promote a certain business this month or a certain business next month or whatever. And that keeps the city, as I say, kind of agnostic about the whole thing, so that we're not accused of favoring one interest or another, or even one kind of business over another.
And as you say that, with energy and enthusiasm, I was thinking, well, I could make that page, that link to those, more exciting. Rehoboth Beach is home to more than however many thriving, vibrant businesses. We hope you check all of them out, or
Yeah.
instead of, here's a link to the Chamber.
Yeah, right. Jay, if you don't mind, let me just pick up on that point. I think one of the things that the website does well and can do even better are exactly those links to other organizations, to other sites, so that we don't have to, I guess, you don't have to, rewrite every section of the website and include everything that goes on in the city. And I think the links can be used really, really well. I'll just weigh in here, and it's probably a little off topic, but the commercial interests, like many other things, I don't know if a visitor knows where to look, because they go to the website and they say, well, this is for businesses and this is for visitors, and what, and I'm looking at the beach and boardwalk regulations as I speak. Well, those apply to residents as well as visitors, and yet you don't link to it
Right.
from the resident section. When
Right.
I say you, I don't mean you.
Yeah, I
You inherited
understand.
this structure.
I understand.
And I think it's a structure that doesn't really serve us well. So one of the things, as you look at redoing the website, we might think about is, for instance, there are those things like businesses in the beach and boardwalk that serve everybody, whether you're a business or a visitor or a resident. Somehow, and I don't know enough about website design to tell you how, maybe that's a new approach that might be used that will give the boardwalk and the beach greater visibility, so that you don't have to click down through the visitor menu.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Howard. The parks is the one that gets me. I'm like, I'm a citizen. I want to go to the park.
Right.
It's under visitors.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I understand that you have to segment your websites, but I think there's a better way than how we've done it.
The commercial aspect of our boardwalk is huge.
Yes, it is.
It is huge. Millions of dollars, more than millions. Probably in the course of a summer season, hundreds of millions of dollars transact on the boardwalk or in the businesses that surround the boardwalk. So it's a big part of the 30 million that we have to distribute to all the expenses that we have in town. We spend millions on sewer projects, on paving, we spend $135,000 just on the bandstand. And so it's a big part of us.
That's what makes us.
But staying, as Howard so eloquently says it, it's just tough to not get involved. And we have Main Street and the Chamber that does get involved, and I guess, and that brings up our next section. But it's a tough, we want you to understand how we're wrestling and how we'd like to make the digital aspect of the boardwalk and beach committee to be powerful.
Well, and my concern about the commercialization you're talking about is, if you justify promoting those businesses based on the revenue they bring, you're going to hear from a lot of other businesses, I would think, around the city. Well, I would like my business included on the website as well.
Yeah. Brian and Frank and Jimmy have been collecting information on businesses on the boardwalk, just basic information. You don't know how far to go with that. Of course, you can't advertise. We're wrestling with that. And would you like to say anything about what you discover, what your thoughts are, where you think we should take that information, or should we?
On the most part, the informal visits that I've made to the vendors and spoken to the staff members more so than the owners, because obviously the owner has got their main objective is to bring customers into their business. They really haven't got too much responsibility as to what's happening on the boardwalk, provided it brings customers into their property. And that sounds selfish, but it isn't. That's what business is all about, bring money in.
Yeah.
So the feedback that I'm getting specifically from the south end of the boardwalk, is the vendors and merchants are very happy with what the city does for them in respect to the boardwalk. It's a clean environment, it's a safe environment, and that's exactly what they want because families bring money into their businesses. There was some negative feedback from one or two vendors, specifically with regards to the new changing rooms that have been built. Apparently that takes up a lot of the delivery room at the end of the streets, so that vehicles now can't deliver to the stores. But on the most part, it's, you know, people are happy with what we're doing or what the city's doing for them, and they appreciate that.
And the reason that we're doing that is to set up contact with the business owners. So they'll have a way to get their problems across, and we'll have a way to respond. And we hear that. If we reach out to these people, I just had a business owner this morning tell me how critical the no parking fees were in the fall. He said, that's when I make my money. It's when you guys take the parking charges away. I said, I didn't know that. And he talked, and we are trying to set up a communication network with the commercial folks. But as Brian said, it's hard, you know, it's a lot of, you talk to staff people, and but they have valid complaints. Luckily, those of us who've been here for a long time know a lot of the owners, and we can talk to those people, and
Some
so
of
that
them know
helps.
we're on the committee too and go, hey, I have a question for you. And I'm like,
That's right.
okay.
I just get complaints.
Yeah. But, so we think it's an important thing, but we're not sure that we certainly don't want to expose any confidential information, names, owners, phones, et cetera,
On the website, you want that information?
anywhere.
Oh, you don't want to expose that?
No,
Right.
Craig keeps is keeping a spreadsheet and keeping track of everything.
The one key thing, I don't know if it happened like with you guys, but it was nice because I guess I walked into one place and they're like, oh yeah, we talked to this one guy with a British accent, and you know, then they said your name. And I'm like, that's great. And they said, well, there's a group of you who are on this committee. And I'm like, yes, and it's on the website. And that was the one thing that they said. And again, I know you inherited it, and it was, you know, even if I searched it, it doesn't pop up. You know, if I go onto the city's website and, you know, typed in, you know, Beach and Boardwalk Committee members, it doesn't take you to, you know, the list of us.
I don't want my name. I don't want anybody just to be able to go on there and find that kind of information. I guess my question is, what kind of things do we really think people are looking for? I went on and did a search of things to do in Rehoboth, and I got hotels, pages and pages and pages. We're going to have to pay an awful lot of money to get in the search engines to get discovered. Not just, I mean, just doing the website isn't going to. What audience are we trying to target?
Do we want to, that's a great question, huh? Do we want to target a particular, in a minute, we're going to talk about what Steve found out, but do we want to who do we want to target?
Who do we
Howard
wanna
talked
target?
about that when we first started.
Yeah.
Do you want the person that stops at the kiosk with their cell phone to know that they can dial up the boardwalk and find information on the boardwalk?
If we're looking to educate people who come into town, like Patricia and I took a walk down the boardwalk and we stopped into the new rest facility, and it was really nice. They have all kinds of changing stations and a family restroom. And we walked all around the outside, and there was nothing that says that's where it is. And I'm walking up the boardwalk and I see people looking and they'll ask, and I just jump in and say, oh, they have changing stations down there. QR codes or something that can be put on signs or on the side of wherever that will direct people to some.
Howard, we talked about that on the very first day.
Yeah.
Right, and I think, honey, one of the challenges we face is that we have so many audiences here. I mean, we've got the people that come and rent for a week, and they have different needs than the people who come for a day trip. The people who come from a day trip are different from the residents, and the residents are different from the businesses. And somehow we keep trying, and I think have so far been pretty successful in communicating with everybody. And, you know, that was the point that Lynne talked about in her, not only her philosophy of her job, but her job duties, which is you've got to keep everybody connected. You keep talking about community engagement, and that's exactly the job. And it's made harder by the wide variety of audiences. It's not impossible, but it's sure, I wouldn't want to have to do what Lynne does every day.
Well, that's what, Patricia, when we talked, there were a couple of times, I'm like, well, I would ask, who is the audience for this? Who are you trying to reach about this? And importantly, what do you want to tell them and what do you want them to do with the information? And then about the things to do in Rehoboth, should the government website be the site where, because we can't advertise Funland on our website.
Right.
We have two organizations already that do a good job of marketing businesses, the Chamber and Rehoboth Beach Main Street, which the city supports. So the city has, in effect, outsourced the promoting of businesses to these quasi-public or private entities, you know, who are set up to do that.
And as I said, I do think there are probably opportunities to work more effectively and cooperatively with those organizations.
Yeah, but those people are only going to be promoting the people who pay dues to their organization, which is probably most, last time I counted, I think Carroll had like over 900 members in the chamber, and I don't know who to ask. I don't know how many members Main Street has just of our downtown people.
Right.
The chamber goes all the way out the highway, and
Dewey.
Craig, do you have any suggestions or ideas that you want us to do to, Craig volunteered to keep a spreadsheet of all of our information. This is all underground, but we gotta keep the information. And
The only thing, I guess there's probably a couple of things, but the one thing I would start with is, you know, as we've gone through the last couple of meetings, this conversation really has expanded. And
yeah, oh boy.
a lot of different directions. And we probably need to bring it back so we can focus on a handful of things that we can manage. I think there's some things we've talked about here that we are clearly excluding because of whether it's Main Street or Chamber of Commerce. There are things that, you know, I probably thought a little bit about, but probably kind of percolated to the top for me today, which is, you know, the events, right? We've never really advertised the events. If we're going to start to advertise the events, what are the potential implications of that? I think Howard mentioned something about, do we link to that event's website? The risk of doing that is we have no control what they put there, right? You look at the events that, you know, just kind of scrolling through the events, everything's pretty straightforward. You know, nothing here is really controversial or anything like that. But, you know, back to my question of, you know, do you have broad authority to deny something? Back to the brand, if somebody comes in with an event that really isn't within our brand, which we haven't defined yet, you know, sounds like they've got broad authority to deny it, but what if they don't and it ends up on the list and then we have to do a link to some webpage that we really don't want to do, big webpage too. I'm giving a little bit of probably an extreme example here, but I think there are some things we probably need to think through. But key thing is probably need to not pull back, but identify a handful of things, you know, 3 to 5 things that we really want to focus on for now. We can always add to that later. One question I wanted to ask Brian, and I guess it's Frank and Jimmy, is as, you know, in the previous meetings when we talked about events, one of the things we wanted to understand from the businesses on the boardwalk, do these events help you? Do they not help you? Did you get any sort of, did you get any feedback on what they like or what they don't like?
I can speak to that. I didn't interview every business on the boardwalk, but I got most of them south of Grenoble and down to Brooklyn Avenue, didn't do Star of the Sea. And I would say the majority were, I wouldn't say apathetic, but they were neutral. They didn't think that the special events were good. They didn't think they were bad. Had one business owner say, I love the special events. They bring people into town. I think it's great. And I had one other business owner say, they're horrible. They don't spend a dime in my business. They don't do anything for me. So, but everyone else was in the middle and not apathetic, but neutral on the commercial special events.
Guy I talked to today, who was just one of many that I've talked to, but he said the people who come for races clog up the boardwalk and they don't spend a dime.
And leave.
And then they leave. And he said he makes his money when you turn the meters off. He said any event that brings kids in, he's in favor of. So he'll probably be really happy 4th of July. I don't know. But then I've heard people say they don't make a penny on the 4th of July. You probably have heard the same thing.
One positive that I heard was the business owners were just glad to have lines of communication open. So they were all willing to give their email addresses. They wanted to be on the email chains.
Yep.
When you mentioned parking, I did have a few boardwalk businesses, just businesses on the boardwalk, that lamented that they like the old 10 p.m. You have to feed the meter until 10 p.m. or I'm sorry, midnight, because in their opinion, after 10 o'clock, the type of people that come into town and you know, they don't have to worry about feeding the meters. It's not the type of person that is their customer or really anybody's customer. It's I hate to say it, but a lot of young people who are there between 10 and midnight, maybe up to no good, maybe not, but they didn't think that the change of you know, having the meters go off at 10 p.m. instead of 12 midnight was a positive one. And there are probably restaurants on the side street in particular that would disagree with them, but.
Yeah, but there aren't any really bars and late night spots on the boardwalk as many as there are elsewhere in town.
Funny, Obie's was open late, serving a limited menu. Gus and Gus was open till 11 last night. Above the Dunes was closed right about 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so was Victoria's and some of the other places there, so.
That's right. So that's something to keep in our mind. That's a good piece of information to hear. Steve, who is our liaison with Main Street, tells us that Main Street is and Greer also mentioned this at the last commissioner's regular meeting. Main Street's putting together an app that people can take a walking tour of Rehoboth, and Cindy Lovett's doing it, and she has the design committee, but they're putting together an app that people can dial up and take a walking tour of Rehoboth with all the different places, and they're not ready to go yet, but they're going to be ready within a few weeks. And they only crossed the boardwalk one time on this walking tour. But they're thinking about making a walking tour of the boardwalk with titling the Boardwalk Barons. I don't know how many of you were there to listen to the last presentation on the Boardwalk Barons that they had at the Boardwalk Plaza. But it was a great lecture, hour and a half, hour and 3/4, something like that. And they talked about the old Boardwalk Barons and where they lived and the hotels that they owned and all the things that went along with it. And those were the guys, in this case they were men, and those were the guys who were the first commissioners of Rehoboth Beach, which came later. But they're thinking about making a walking tour of that. And I don't know, and Steve and I talked, I don't know whether we would like to get in on something like that and have an app that have a boardwalk tour of today and then have our QR codes or whatever. You're looking at the place where,
But what are you going to promote on the boardwalk? Commercial properties? Because
No.
that's not our remit.
no,
So what would you promote on the boardwalk?
oh, all the things that are on the boardwalk. This is where Commander Shock used to live. This is the Verrazano
Like
Monument.
historical facts?
Huh?
Historical
Yeah.
facts, right?
Yeah, this is.
Well, I
the-
wonder,
BIA.
Jay, on that score, I mean, Cindy Lovett's husband did that presentation for the
Good.
Historical Society. Have they put it up online? Because it seems to me that's the Historical Society's
Yeah.
niche. And I think it'd be great if Main Street would link to the Historical Society's, history of the Boardwalk Barons. But again, I keep thinking, what's our role? And our role, maybe if we want them to do anything, we'll go back to what are the rules and the regulations on the boardwalk? So if you're taking this walking tour, can I use my bike? Can I take my dogs? Can I, I think that's where our role comes in.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're planning on linking to the rules and regulations that are up on the city website or anywhere else. So I think that would be
I think that would be our prerogative, wouldn't it?
well, it's their app, so it's their prerogative, but I think
Yeah,
it's something we should
We wouldn't
request.
want to, if we couldn't control what we're doing, that would be their deal.
Right, we should, I think, ask them to try and link to some of these key information places on the city website.
And they might do that. I'm just throwing that out. Do we want that? Do we want to think about that? Do we want to talk about that? Is it even critical? Is it even worth talking about?
I think historical things like that would be better off doing, if the Main Street would put that on their thing and not having yet another app that people have to navigate through. We need to let people know what the rules are on the beach and boardwalk. That's pretty critical.
Would that be worth, would you consider a boardwalk tour at all? Are there enough places on the boardwalk but as Brian said, it would be hard to do.
You go
without
back to the
making it
commercial
commercial.
issue. You go back to the commercial issue, and I think we need to stay away from that.
I think
my
if we
opinion.
can confine it to city services
Right.
and facilities on the boardwalk, I think that's where we fall in.
In
I
that
think the
case,
minute you go to the
probably-
commercial, then that's somebody else's job.
In that case, probably that wouldn't lend itself to a
I don't think that works
self-guided tour.
for an app, for a tour of the facilities, but where are the bathrooms, where are the water fountains, where are the, for a walking tour, I don't know that that's really what we want to spend money or time on.
Okay, how can we do that? What's the best way to do it? We know we could put it on the website.
Well, I think that's what we really need to concentrate on and maybe achieve that and then go on to something else. But that's a huge
Is that
initiative.
Yeah, is that going to be available?
Put what on the website? I wasn't
Well, we were
clear.
talking,
All the
remember,
rules and
we're talking about
regulations.
just in general.
Well, the
up-
rules and
updating.
regulations
Rules
are
and
there.
regulations are there.
Rules and regulations,
In fact,
yes.
they're there several times.
We are good about rules.
And it's one of the things that I think is a good object lesson, Lynn, is that if I'm a visitor and I don't know where to go for information, if I go, I was just looking through it earlier, if I go to Beach and Boardwalk, there's a list of rules and regulations. But there's also a place that lists no smoking zones in the city. And that includes the fact that smoking's not allowed on the beach. And then you go to the bike section, and that includes the fact that bikes are not allowed on the boardwalk except for certain times and certain hours. And then there's another section about dogs. But it seems to me the rules and regulations under the beach and boardwalk is that good central place to find those rules and regulations. And I think we could do a similar drop down of here are all the city facilities on the boardwalk. Here's where the bathrooms are, the changing rooms, the foot showers, the water fountains, all of that sort of thing. And it could be done with a map, or it could be done with just a list of their locations. But to me, well, again, that keeps us out of we're favoring some business over another. If they are all city functions and city services, then that's, I think, where we ought to be letting people know the availability.
Right, and I also think when you consider what you're going to add to the website. It's a question of what are you going to delete from the website that's duplication.
Yes.
And that would make it easier for people to view the website and to maneuver around it.
That's part of the natural
And we know you didn't.
mushrooming of websites over time.
Right.
Information gets duplicated and,
Right, and we know you inherited this, so this is not, anything, a criticism. It's just observations about what would make it easier for
Sure.
visitors and residents and businesses.
and I'm not taking, I'm not sure there's a website that exists that couldn't be improved somehow, so.
That's right.
I find myself with a thought about your discussion about walking, and is your goal to bring more people to the boardwalk, to discover the boardwalk? I mean, public art or scavenger hunt might be ways to do that, too.
I mean, from my point of view, it was really to inform people and make it easier for people to learn about what
What is
events are
there.
happening, and that would be my interest in what we're doing, is really an information sharing. And, because I just, with my own family, when they come down, it's like they're all on their iPhone, they're trying to find this and that, and where's this, and, and it just should be a little bit more intuitive, I guess, is the word.
When they come down and get on their phones, what are they looking on?
Well, they're looking for, what are the rules about, can you bring a skateboard on the boardwalk?
Where are they looking, and how do they know where to look there?
Well,
That's
that's-
my question.
They're going, well,
They're
they
going to
Google.
the city site?
They Google first,
Google,
right?
they do
That's
a
the first thing you
search.
do,
But
is you
what are
Google.
they reaching? Because I was not able to find stuff. I mean, I'm thinking, who's the audience that's going to be looking for this stuff?
Right.
And I just wonder I'm curious to see where they're getting this.
Well, a lot of, you can Google Rehoboth Beach, and up comes the Rehoboth .com, cityofrehoboth.com, not the civic site, but and so from there, you then you become a detective, in essence, is that's what's happening with people, I think.
But they did find the city site.
They
'cause I
found the
did
city
not
site,
find it.
yes.
Well, and to Honey's point, I think if you Google Rehoboth Beach, the city site is somewhere fourth or
Yeah, you
fifth
get
down the
Joe
list,
Maggio's site
because
or
people are paying to get their,
They're paying to
I mean,
get
the
their
chamber and others are
advertisements.
paying to get their
But the
hits
chamber
at the
wasn't,
top of the list.
bookings.com and
Yeah, right,
Mm.
right,
Yelp
right,
and
all
all these
those.
other places are up there. and I
Exactly.
just don't know how many pages people will scroll.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we're worrying about building something that nobody's going to use. The information is there, but people have to know when they walk down the boardwalk, oh, I can find more information about this by going here. And I just
Maybe we should talk again about QR codes.
really think that's.
I don't know.
The key with the QR, I mean, the thing that's really funny, and before COVID, when I was traveling a lot, especially in different cities, and not just resort towns, any town that has the parking meters like we do, where you have to go to, I mean, it's not all of them set up, but I mean, you have the QR code, every person walks up to our meter and their phone immediately goes there to either find the area that they're going into. Ideally, that's the target. And I think, are you a visitor to Rehoboth? Use this QR code, click it, and it can take you to a site that, can answer a lot of your questions.
Is it that easy that you create a QR code and you stick it in a window of a store or a
Anybody
restaurant?
can
Oh,
create
yeah.
it. You
Yeah.
can create one
Coded
on-
link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, maybe that's,
The hard part
maybe
is
we're
on the
making this
other
too tough.
end, making sure where you go
Yes.
is attractive, informative,
Well,
appropriate.
it not only could go in, in the windows of businesses and things, but I mean, at some point, when the city's putting up, wayfinding signs
Right.
that says, the beach is this way and the park is that way,
Right.
you could say, need information about the boardwalk, and there's your QR code, and it scans and sends you directly to that information. I mean, again, we've got to know what's there when they land,
Right.
but if we have things like this very good list of rules and regulations on the boardwalk, then that's where the QR code goes.
Right.
Or you could do one for a list of events. Want to know what's coming up? Here's your QR code.
Maybe we're making headway. Maybe we're making headway. What three main things shall we think about for our next meeting? shall we continue, how shall we narrow this wide expanse of information that we've talked about today and zero in on what we want to do at our next meeting? What would be the most efficient thing for us to do? Shall we limit ourselves to, shall we discuss, I need some ideas.
The commercialization thing seems to be a rabbit hole that we might not get out of, so maybe we could come to a resolution on commercialization.
Shall we not, shall we,
Frank, let me try that one. Maybe what we do is, at the next meeting, if we can determine how we want to interact with the chamber and Main Street, give them the job of advertising the commercial side of the boardwalk, and how do we want to use that, then we don't get down the rabbit hole, I think.
When we first started the discussion, I was in favor of looking at this issue and possibly promoting the area, promoting the local businesses. But the more I get to thinking about it, the boardwalk, it's an important part of the brand, that's true. But in a way, it markets itself. And the businesses there will darn sure market themselves if they want to stay in business. So I think it's fair to say that as a committee, we should concentrate on issues like we're talking about, the rules, the regulations, the safety, stick to the original mission statement about a clean, safe environment where aesthetics are important, and get back to some of those other issues. Like, I would love to talk about the new recycling thing. I think it's gone well, but that's a topic for future discussion.
do we want to not talk about, do we want to stay in contact with the businesses?
Oh, sure. I mean, there'll probably be
So
ongoing issues.
so that's an aspect of commercialization that we want to maintain.
Line of
We wanna set up
communication,
communica-
basically.
Goodwill.
Huh?
I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
a city committee, reaching out to, that's how I looked at it when, I'm sure we all did. I mean, we were just doing this as a
That's-
goodwill gesture.
that's
to
how
just
I
say,
looked at it,
Hey,
too.
we're here for you. I think that's just, any committee, I mean, that's something, all those businesses are on the boardwalk are what make the boardwalk the boardwalk. And I think that it's good that we do have a very good rapport with them and continue that.
Yeah, my intention was to set up a communications system with the commercial businesses, contact points, stay on them, remind them that we're here,
Yeah,
and stay current
can
with
always do
their
that.
information.
yeah.
But we don't need to promote any of them. If they
No,
see
other than
issues-
to know how many of them, and you've already done that. You've,
Right.
okay, we have 17 restaurants, we have
Yeah.
4 condos, 16 flip-flop shops, and
Like
so
if they
on.
say there's one particular area where we're seeing a lot of kids hanging out here, you might want to look at
Yeah,
that.
what do you think
just
about
to
A,
keep
B,
it-
and C?
Yeah.
Right.
So, do we want to talk about defining that aspect? Or do we want to slide into what we would like to see on a website? Or do we want to talk about how we handle events?
I think we've had really good discussions on all the topics that you've brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's now, we know what we don't want to do, and I think it's time to focus on honing in on what we want to do. And I think a lot of the responses have been, what are the rules? And I think that's been, just the echo of everybody, and it all goes back to the rules, whether it's with an event or anything else. People are going to want to know where the new changing stations are, where the restrooms are. What are the hours I can bring my bike? What are the hours or what are the seasons that I can, have my dog on there? And a lot of people, they just don't know. And I mean, it's, you would feel bad that we would have to have the persona of the police officers going, hey, I'm really sorry, but you can't have your dog on the boardwalk. This is the summer. And, we've all seen it. And the person's like, oh, I just didn't know. And I think the issue is, people can, myself included, you get oblivious to all the signs. And I couldn't tell you if I know where all the Riptide signs are on the boardwalk. I know what to do with the Riptide. somebody could go, last night, somebody could put a new sign right there that says what I can and can't do. I wouldn't pay any attention to it. But it's just because we all walk the boardwalk, we all have the blinders on. I think it has to be, what makes it easy for somebody, whether they're a resident or a visitor, what can and can't I do?
Okay, for the next meeting, let's talk about the rules, regulations, the guidelines, how to publicize them. Do we want to put them all in one place? How do we want to transmit that information to the public? What branch of the public are we going to reach? And we'll not talk about events next time. We'll not talk about contact with the commercial businesses. Let's focus on the guidelines, rules, regulations, and tips on the boardwalk.
And how to get them to.
And how to communicate that,
communicate them,
and who we want to communicate to. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Okay, I probably wasn't close enough to the microphone.
Good.
Put it in.
Okay, we'll do that, and we're gonna meet on the 26th of July.
I will not be here, I know that.
Oh, honey.
I don't know.
We'll meet on the 26th of July, and at 2 PM. Is that a bad time for other people?
It's fine.
Okay, you have to watch and stay.
I won't be near a computer. I
26th.
will be away.
Okay. Is there any other,
Do we need a July meeting? I mean, since we're not gonna be able to do any of this stuff. I wonder whether we need a July meeting.
I was gonna ask Chief and Kevin to tell us how the summer's going. Do you want to take July off, and do you want to take July off and skip to August, or do you want to have some other arrangement? Is everybody up for July? Are we still interested in
We know two of you won't be here, July?
No, just me.
Just you.
just honey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with skipping July, moving it into August.
Either way,
Yeah.
I'm here.
okay Either way.
Okay, let's do that. Let's give everybody a chance to relax, to get the summer and work on your thoughts. And maybe stay up with Lynn, Patricia, and get some more ideas going. And let's try to meet on the 30th of August at 2 o'clock. And I'll ask Linda and Ann if they can reserve that time for us.
Chief Banks will have even more data for us in August.
Chief Banks will
So,
have,
there you
Kevin will
go.
have more stuff.
Works
There'll be more graffiti.
2 PM?
Please, no,
Two-
no more graffiti.
2 PM on the 30th of August, and we have a 9 o'clock meeting on the 30th of August for trees.
Commissioners do.
But the 2 o'clock still is open as far as I can tell. And I'll clear that with Ann and Linda and see if that is still open.
Jay, could I ask for one other subject to be added to that meeting?
Yes.
I feel like there's this 800-pound gorilla out there, which is that the mayor and commissioners approved several months ago the redesign of a new beach patrol and restroom building at Baltimore Avenue. And as far as I know, I have not heard any information about it. I think that will change the boardwalk more than anything that's ever going to happen in this city in the next several years. So I'd love, if there is action on that, if somebody, and I don't know if it's Kevin or if it's the mayor or who it is, or the beach patrol captain, to come and give us a report about what's going on there, what's being designed, what is the thinking.
Yes, let me write that down. If you recall, the mayor said that this would be a minimal impact on the view shed at Baltimore. And if you recall, the Boardwalk and Beach Committee had some real hesitation to agree to that. So, yeah, we allocated, I can't remember how much, a couple $100,000 for the design of that, for the beginning of the design of that Beach Patrol headquarters and comfort station. So there,
And I'd just like to know, where is that?
let's have a report from Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Got that down. Now, what have I missed? I think we're good to go. So, is there any other additional comments that I need to worry about or that we need to worry about?
Can we get, Jay, can we get an update, I'm sorry, real quickly, not today, but on the next meeting, on the 5G? We put all this effort into the 5G on the boardwalk, and we've heard all of a sudden it's just dead. You know, it's just a dead zone, so
No, it's not dead. Status on 5G.
just an update would be great.
We'll talk to the, I'm sure we're gonna continue to have the interim city manager. We'll talk to Evan and see if he's heard anything new, or ask Lynn, she might have heard some new stuff on 5G.
I haven't heard anything new.
Commissioners haven't either. Then we're the last ones to know. So, if there's nothing else, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. It is 3:35.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much.